Your Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. On today's episode, I'll get into my Chicago Blackhawks goaltender outlook while also previewing Game 1 of the Calder Cup playoffs, best of 3 play-in series between the Rockford IceHogs and Chicago Wolves, before wrapping things up with some thoughts on the putrid local TV ratings from CHSN for the 24-25 season. Real quick though, first, please make sure to go and hit that like button, hop in the comment section below, and to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Go and follow my Strictly Blackhawks account on X as well. That can be found at Talkin' Hockey. That way you can get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And one final shout out that I gotta give here briefly as well goes out to today's sponsor, which is FanDuel. Make sure to check out FanDuel.com right now to win $250 worth of bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins all throughout the NBA playoffs. All right, happy Wednesday, everyone. Thank you all again for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. After going through my offensive and defensive outlooks in the past 2 episodes, quick reminder to go and check those out if you haven't done so already. But on the show here today, I'll be closing things out with my Blackhawks goaltender outlook, where I'll go through some team and individual statistics, talk about the future in between the pipes, and also what needs to be addressed in that department here in the offseason to help keep things trending in the right direction. What I want to say here real quick though, Blackhawks fans, is it's tough to go and find statistics that only dictate how the goaltenders have fared this year. I mean, basically every other statistic you go and look at has some sort of tie to the team. So I will be mostly going through individual stats for Spencer Knight and Arvid Soderblom here on today's episode. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to go and look at the numbers from Peter Mrazek, as he was only here up until the trade deadline, dealt with some injury problems up until that point, and also with this being a Blackhawks goaltender outlook, with Mrazek no longer being a part of the franchise, wouldn't make a lot of sense to put him in that conversation. But a couple of team stats that I wanted to go through here real quick before diving into individual numbers, just to give you all some feelings on what some idea of what the workload was like for these Blackhawks goaltenders this year, and also the situations that they found themselves in. First, in terms of shots against in all situations, the Blackhawks gave up 2,551 shots on goal this year. That was good for 30th in the NHL. In terms of goals against, they were also right there in the bottom of the league, surrendering 292 goals. That was second to last in the league, ranking 31st. However, where the Blackhawks did fare a little bit better was in the team save percentage category. The Blackhawks had a .894 save percentage as a team this year, which was actually ranked 24th in the NHL. Now, it's still in the bottom third of the entire league, but compared to where they were ranked for goals against and shots against, I think this goes to show that the Blackhawks fared a little bit better than maybe we anticipated this season. Although, what I will say is, no shutouts for the Blackhawks this year. They were the only team in the NHL to not record one shutout. And I don't have these numbers right in front of me, Blackhawks fans, but I would put money down that the Blackhawks do not have more than 3 shutouts as a team in the last 3 seasons combined. I know that's a result of the team being one of the worst in the NHL, and also the defense not being very savvy. And once these young defensemen and also the young forwards, in addition to a young goaltender like Spencer Knight, as they continue to get more experience, get more reps, get a little bit older and more physically mature, you would anticipate some of these numbers starting to fare a little bit better next season. But diving now into the individual stats for the Blackhawks goaltenders, definitely got to start with Spencer Knight, who was acquired from the Florida Panthers at this year's trade deadline. Now is being looked at, hopefully, as the number one goaltender here in Chicago, still only 24 years old. And what I want to start things off with before looking at the numbers for Knight is what we should consider and what we should keep in mind is all the changes that Spencer had to go through, right? Obviously, moving organizations, but being in just a completely opposite situation to where he found himself in Florida. When he was the backup to Sergei Bobrovsky, he wasn't the one who was having to get the lion's shares of the opportunities. And also with the Panthers being one of the best teams in the NHL, Stanley Cup champions last year, weren't really giving up, 30 to 40 shots as frequently as Spencer Knight was facing here with the Blackhawks. Going to a new city, being around new teammates, whole new organization. There was a lot of change in Spencer Knight's life. And as someone who's dealt with anxiety problems in his career, I don't think it would be all that surprising to see I don't think it's surprising to see there were kind of some bumps in the road for Spencer in his 15 starts with the Blackhawks. But altogether, he wound up putting a 5-8-2 record with a 3.18 goals against average and 893 save percentage. Kind of middling numbers there for Knight. But what was super apparent to me was when this kid was rolling, when he was on his A game, he has the abilities to be one of the best goaltenders truly in this league. He has incredible athleticism, can make those highlight reel types of saves, get post to post to rob opponents of surefire goals. It's now just about raising the baseline a little bit, working on that consistency and not having as many of those starts where he gives up, 4 or 5 goals and 20 to 25 shots faced and just didn't really look like the same goaltender that he was in his previous start. I think those are the things that Spencer really needs to work on here in the offseason. A couple other stats that I wanted to point out for Spencer. .913 save percentage at even strength this year. He fared very well at 5-on-5. And how about this high danger save percentage number from Spencer Knight as well? .918 high danger scoring chance save percentage at even strength, which goes along with what I just said, Blackhawks fans. He has those incredible athletic abilities to get from post to post and make those highlight reel types of saves. He has that in his bag. It's just about, again, working on that consistency, raising the baseline, and making yourself more of a serviceable goaltender on a nightly basis. Next, we move over to Arvid Soderblom, who did have a larger workload here with the Blackhawks this season as he was up in the NHL all year long. Got off to a magnificent start, which was so crazy considering how he looked all throughout last year. Unfortunately, wasn't able to keep that momentum going to close out the season. Seemed like the Four Nations break might have ruined his mojo there a little bit. But altogether on the season, Soderblom posted a 10-18-7 record in 35 starts with a 3.18 goals against average, just like Spencer Knight, along with a .89 save percentage. Here's a couple of interesting stats for Arvid Soderblom as well. At even strength this year, I just mentioned Spencer Knight's even strength save percentage in 15 starts with the Blackhawks was .913. For Arvid Soderblom, he did not fare as well at 5-on-5 with a .897 save percentage. What's real interesting, though, Blackhawks fans, is when the Blackhawks were shorthanded, Arvid Soderblom had a .903 save percentage. So he was better when the Blackhawks were down a man than when they were playing at even strength, which is just super wild. And then in terms of his high danger scoring chance save percentage at even strength, nowhere near what Spencer Knight was with a .800 high danger save percentage. For Arvid Soderblom, I think those two stats that I just highlighted, the 5v5 save percentage versus the save percentage while the Blackhawks were shorthanded, I think that goes to show you what type of goalie Arvid Soderblom is at this point. It's a goalie who you just cannot put your finger on. You don't really know what you're going to get on a nightly basis. And for this Blackhawks team, how can you make them better in the offseason? Well, obviously, it's going to be Spencer Knight continuing to develop, gaining experience, getting comfortable with a lot of his new teammates, and getting himself established here in this Blackhawks organization. I think how this Blackhawks goaltender tandem can get better also is going to be heavily dictated on what happens to Arvid Soderblom, as he is a pending restricted free agent here this summer and is about to turn 26 years old. He's now been up in the NHL for parts of 3 seasons with the Blackhawks. It could be time to move on, not only because of that, but also because Spencer Knight is still under contract. We know he's going to be the number 1 for the Blackhawks next year. Then you got Drew Commesso, who's got 1 more year under contract. And considering how things have gone for him in the second half of this season in the AHL, I think next year will probably be his last season with the IceHogs, assuming all goes well. It would probably be time for him to take that next step in his career and become the Blackhawks NHL backup. And then during his exit interview, we also heard general manager Kyle Davidson say he wants Laurent Brossoit to compete for the backup spot in training camp next fall. So with him saying that about Brossoit, who's under contract for 1 more year, we obviously didn't see him at all this past season, not even in a practice setting. The guy was truly a ghost. But what I will say, Blackhawks fans, even considering what just transpired with Laurent Brossoit this year, I undoubtedly would feel more confident, and let me know in the comment section below if you feel the same way. I would undoubtedly feel more confident about the Blackhawks goaltender tandem going into next year if it's Knight Brossoit instead of Knight Soderblom once again. And if you don't want Arvid Soderblom as your NHL backup, I don't really know if sending him to Rockford makes all that much sense. I don't know if he really has all that much to prove at that level. And also, he would be taking starts away from Drew Commesso. And I don't think the Blackhawks would like that to happen. So kind of what I'm getting to here, Blackhawks fans, is I do wonder if Arvid Soderblom's tenure with the Blackhawks has come to an end. And I really feel like, while there were some ups for Soderblom and he surprised us all with his performance in the first half of the season, we still haven't seen that full season's worth of consistency. And I think in a year next season where the Blackhawks, look, they're not going to be contending for the Stanley Cup playoffs, but we have to take a step in the right direction. And I don't know how they'd be confident enough or more confident in Arvid Soderblom as their backup, even if he maybe still has some upside. That's debatable. I just don't know how you'd feel more confident with Arvid Soderblom as your backup over Laurent Brossoit, even if he was a ghost for the Blackhawks this year. Considering what he's done in his NHL career, I think it would be a pretty solid tandem for the Hawks next season to go in with Spencer Knight as the starter and Laurent Brossoit as the backup, and then you have Drew Commesso on call as well. It's going to be really interesting to see what the Blackhawks can do, but outside of that, how can this unit get better? I know this isn't the most fun answer, Blackhawks fans, but honestly, it's very similar to the defensive situation for the Blackhawks that I just talked about yesterday, because now you're at a point where you really just want your kids to shine and you want them to be getting NHL reps. It's kind of the same situation with with Spencer Knight as the number 1 goaltender, because he's a young guy himself. It's just now about continuing to develop, learn from your mistakes, put together that consistency, establish some good chemistry and connection with the defenders in front of you, understand how they like to play, their tendencies, get comfortable with moving the puck to them. Those are all the things we need to see out of Spencer Knight in the summer to hope that this Blackhawks goaltender unit as a whole gets better next season. And also, I think putting in a more confident backup behind Spencer Knight undoubtedly would help this Blackhawks goaltender unit and this Blackhawks defense and probably the entire Blackhawks team as a whole. So that's why, even though Laurent Brossoit is definitely risky as the backup goaltender next year, and we don't even know if he's going to be healthy at that point in time, I think if he, keeping my fingers crossed, if he can be healthy at that point, I think you have to go with the Knight Brossoit tandem and let Drew Commesso get the lion's share of the starts with the Rockford IceHogs, because again, it'll probably be his last year in Rockford. Brossoit will likely be coming off the books after next season, and that would lead to a Spencer Knight, Drew Commesso tandem potentially in the 26-27 season. The biggest thing, though, that Spencer Knight needs to work on is that consistency and getting himself comfortable here as the number 1 goaltender of the future with the Chicago Blackhawks. But there is my Blackhawks goaltender outlook moving forward. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, make sure to stick with me as I'll get into a preview of the IceHogs Game 1 matchup in their best-of-3 play-in series. Real quick, though, I do got to talk to you all first about Wonderful Pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Well, then go and crack into a great source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. And Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts, with each 1 ounce serving having 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily nutritional value. Plus, they're packed with fiber to help keep you feeling fuller longer. And who doesn't love a good pistachio? I know I certainly do. I could literally sit there eating them and cracking them all day long. And the satisfying crack of opening each shell, it's like a perfect mini snack meditation. So whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch by visiting wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Again, that's wonderfulpistachios.com to check it out today. Segment 2, the Rockford IceHogs are taking part in the best-of-3 play-in series in the Calder Cup playoffs for the 3rd time in the last 4 years, with Game 1 going down here this evening at the Allstate Arena in Rosemont, Illinois, as the IceHogs will be squaring off with the Chicago Wolves, which should make for a very fun preliminary series, with the winner of this best-of-3 play-in series, by the way, advancing on to face the 1-seeded Milwaukee Admirals in the first round. For those of you who haven't seen my IceHogs updates throughout the course of the season, don't really know what they've been up to, I got you covered. The IceHogs finished the year with a 31-33, 6-2 record in 72 games, giving them 70 points. That was good enough for 5th out of 7 teams in the AHL Central Division standings. 5 of the 7 teams, of course, qualify into the Calder Cup playoffs, but those 4 and 5 seeds got to duke it out in that best-of-3 play-in series. The IceHogs finished 5th. The Chicago Wolves finished 4th. And for the IceHogs, they're no stranger to the Calder Cup playoffs. This is the 4th year in a row in which they've qualified. Unfortunately, 3 of those years have been in this play-in series. But getting past the first round has been an issue for this bunch. They haven't reached the second round of the Calder Cup playoffs since way back in 2017-18. And while I'm always an optimist, I'm going to be hoping my boys do well. I think it's going to be tough for this group in particular to be the first group to get it done in the last 8 years, as there's just been a lot going on with the IceHogs this season. Not a ton of consistency at the end of the year there. Basically, any noteworthy prospect was up in the NHL with the Blackhawks. Now, obviously, there are some of those guys who are eligible to play in Rockford's postseason, but they haven't been around all that frequently here as of late. There's been a lot of rotating forward lines. Also, Anders Sorensen was promoted to the big leagues in the middle of the season. Mark Eaton, assistant general manager, is now the interim head coach. So, honestly, I'm just pretty proud that the IceHogs have even been able to get themselves back into the Calder Cup playoffs here this year. However, what I will say is there are a handful of noteworthy players to watch for the IceHogs throughout this postseason run that give me some hope that they might be able to pull off an upset. First and foremost, we got to talk about Cole Gutman, former guest here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast. Super good dude. Always appreciated Cole making the time to come on the show. But he was the leading scorer for the IceHogs in every offensive category this year. In goals with 20, in assists with 34, and in points with 54 in 70 games. Likely going to be the top line center for the IceHogs when they open things up here this evening. Also, keep an eye out for Brett Seney, the captain, who has tons of experience in the area. Was a little banged up this season, but when he was healthy, super productive, tallying 39 points in 58 games. And then don't forget about Andreas Athanasiou, baby. AA. I think a lot of Blackhawks fans probably, once he was sent down to the minors, he was out of sight, out of mind. And I think a lot of people probably forgot he was even still part of the organization. Injury plague season for AA. But when he was healthy, like Brett Seney, put up some really good numbers for the IceHogs. 27 points, 11 goals, and 16 assists in 30 AHL games. speed kills, and he's absolutely got it. Big addition in the top 6 for the IceHogs. And then outside of those 3 veterans, it's all about the kids for Rockford in the postseason. Artem Levshinov, the 2nd overall pick in last year's draft, of course, is back. Spent most of his first pro campaign with the IceHogs this year, playing in 52 games, registering 22 points, 5 goals, and 17 assists. And since being reassigned from the Blackhawks when the NHL season closed out, we've been seeing Levshinov play mostly on the 2nd pairing with Kevin Fitzgerald. The top pairing for the Rockford IceHogs looks like it's going to be Kevin Korchinski and Ethan Del Mastro. They've been skating with one another ever since KK was reassigned there late in the season. Great experience for both of these guys as they're going to be trying to earn NHL jobs out of camp in the fall. Ethan Del Mastro, by the way, is the one who's been playing on his offside, which I think is great experience for him as well, considering that might be something he has to do moving forward with the sheer number of lefties the Hawks have on their blue line. And then the third defensive pairing, it's all about the kids on the back end for the IceHogs. Tage Harding and Nolan Allen, some 2 big bodies there on the third pairing. And shout out to Tage Harding. He's been pretty solid since signing his ELC after his senior season with Providence. He has 3 assists in his first 8 AHL games. And then Nolan Allen, who was with Rockford for the entire second half of the regular season, he's mustered up 6 points, 2 goals, and 4 assists in 20 games with Rockford. One other name I got to bring up, of course, is 2024 first-round pick Marek Vanacker, who sadly had his season come to a close over the weekend after Brantford was eliminated from the second round of the OHL playoffs to the Oshawa Generals. Little bit of a slow start to the regular season for Vanacker coming off of shoulder surgery, but definitely picked it up as the season progressed and wound up tallying 11 points, 6 goals, and 5 assists in 11 postseason games. Not exactly sure if he's going to be in the lineup tonight, but considering his upside, considering his speed, considering he was a first-round pick for this organization, I feel pretty confident that he's going to find his way in the lineup. One other thing that us Blackhawks fans should be keeping an eye out for, this goes to the Chicago Wolves. Their 2 best players, 2 former high first-round draft picks. Bradley Nadeau, not all that long ago, 32 goals for the Chicago Wolves here this season. And then Ryan Suzuki was the team leader in points for the Wolves with 59 on the season. Those are the 2 youngsters the IceHogs need to have circled every time they're out there on the ice. But there is everything to know before Game 1 of the IceHogs best of 3 play-in series with the Chicago Wolves begins here this evening. I'll be having a recap of this matchup on tomorrow's episode. Make sure to be on the lookout for that. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, before I close out today's episode, still got to talk about the horrendous CHSN TV ratings from 24-25. But first, I got to talk to you all about the fine folks over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are now underway, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get awarded with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's 250 extra bucks that you can use on everything, from buzzer beaters to early round upsets, and even who's going to lift the trophy when it's all said and done. Plus, after the game tips off, you can still even combine live props into a same game parlay for a chance to win real big. So don't miss out on this incredible offer. Again, it's $250 worth of bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All you got to do is head on over to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 worth of bonus bets today. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you to everyone out there who made Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen. Here to start off your day. For your second listen, make sure to go and check out Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night, up until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned, you can get local analysis on a national scale with the coverage you love from Locked On. And you can easily find Locked On NHL Game Night right now on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Segment 3, the Blackhawks on ice had another pretty rough season, finishing with the second worst record in the NHL. However, one area where the Blackhawks were worse than they were on the ice was in the local television ratings, as Sports Business Journal just a couple of days ago released the local TV ratings from the 24-25 season, and the Blackhawks, unsurprisingly, saw the biggest drop in the ratings of any team, down 78%. Not a typo. 78% compared to the 23-24 season, or not only 78%, on average, a decline of 400,000 homes. And by the way, almost 30% worse than any other team in the league. No other NHL club had worse than a 50% drop from their previous season. The New York Rangers were next closest to the Blackhawks. They had a 49% dip, or maybe it was the Colorado Avalanche. I can't remember exactly, but I know it was one of those two teams. Either way, no one even sniffed the putrid downfall that the Blackhawks had this year, down 78%. Horrible, embarrassing, humiliating, painful. It's hard for me to find words to describe how sad this truly is, Blackhawks fans. It's a horrendous look for CHSN. It's been an absolute disaster since their launching, and based on these numbers, now we know why they declined to release them. They declined to show how many people were truly tuning in when they were requested to do so earlier on in the season. And Danny Wirtz gave a comment to Scott Powers of The Athletic about it. Honestly, though, I don't really care what Danny Wirtz has to say. We're at the point where your words don't mean anything, buddy. I know you've told us over the last 8 months that you're focused on getting a deal done and you're trying super hard. No one really cares about your words. We care about actions. And to not have a deal done with Comcast, to not have the Blackhawks on television for an entire season is such a laughingstock. It's almost as big of a joke as banding together with the Chicago Bulls and the Chicago White Sox, aka Jerry Reinsdorf, and thinking people are going to pay money to watch three of the worst sports teams in their own respected leagues. I mean, who in their right mind, with the world as expensive as it is right now, who would do that? And by the way, this is the same Blackhawks organization that's charging people $60, $70 to come and watch this team at the United Center. They're not doing any giveaways. Drinks aren't cheap. They're super expensive. It's a tough look for this organization, man. And I just really don't care what Danny Wirtz has to say about this any longer. We need affirmative action done. And on the bright side, there has been a report from the Chicago Sun-Times recently that WGN-TV could be another landing spot for the Blackhawks in the future. I hope so. CHSN, what a bad idea this entire thing was. And I just feel bad for all the Blackhawks fans out there who, want to tune into this team. Maybe not on a nightly basis because obviously they're horrible. But to not even have the option to do so is so rough, so disappointing. And with Chicago sports where they're at as a whole, the Cubs on marquee, the Blackhawks, Bulls, and White Sox now on their own sports network. It's like, what are we doing here, man? It was a horrible idea right from the jump. I don't know how, before creating this thing, they didn't reach out to Comcast and get an idea of how complicated negotiations were going to be. It's like they dove into this thing without doing any research whatsoever and just being like, oh my gosh, Blackhawks, Bulls, and Cubs fans, they're going to love this one central hub to watch all of your teams. Well, guess what? No one cares to watch either of these teams if it's going to cost $29.99 a month. No one's going to pay that amount. It's sad, man. 78% decline from the season prior. Sad. Embarrassing. And Danny Wirtz, this is what he had to say. I'll go through his comments just for the sake of going over it. Quote, at the end of the day, the availability of our games on TV this past season was unacceptable, and our fans deserve better. I am focused on finding potential solutions for next season with our partners at CHSN. We are about to celebrate 100 years of hockey as well as usher in the next generation on the ice. I am committed to ensuring our fans can see that. Well, I'm sure you were committed to ensuring the fans could see that last year. What was the difference? You just couldn't get it done? I don't really understand. Tough Blackhawks fans. Tough.